Hi guys, this is Pilleater, and I have on is Armenian Chica, right?
Yeah, Armenian Chica here, lads. Ooh.
Hi there. So,
Yeah. Huh?
you have a very interesting YouTube channel. I was looking at some of your videos, and your
They're
latest
not great,
video.
are they?
No, they're pretty good. I like listening to YouTube channels, and one of your latest videos is a look at Irish identity and the impact of foreign occupation. I
Hmm.
find the Irish thing really interesting myself is because I actually come from an Irish American background, even though that might sound really strange, especially on my
Hmm.
dad's side. And it's something in America where if you're Irish, you take this kind of strange, decadent pride in it. But everyone in America is pretty much out of touch with the fact that
What do you mean by a decadent pride?
well, there's this St. Patrick's Day in America basically means a bunch of frap and college boys have fun.
Oh, so you associate Irishness with getting drunk and fighting and
Nobody really makes connections to their Irish background. If you're an O'Donnell or a Murphy, and then it's like your mom is like Italian or like you have mixed European ancestry. You're not full-blooded Irish or connected with Irish history. It's kind of an American thing. But from the background, if you're actually Irish, you talk about all these things in Irish and culture of which pretty much every single American is out of touch, including myself. So yeah, it's not. I'm kind of a bastard child when I'll have like an Irish a half Irish background, but not really in touch with that.
yeah. Well, yeah, I find that a lot of Americans are deracinated, from their original European ethnicity and sorry, from their ancestors and their ancestors' culture. And there's no real connection in the modern day between them, except for maybe Italians. Like there seems to be some sort of connection between them and their ancestors, but maybe that's just the stereotypes. Maybe modern day Italians who were born in the 21st century really don't have this connection, um,
It,
and
it,
they're just like the rest of the Americans. Who knows? I'm not an American. I can't really comment on that.
well, here's the thing too. In the American crisis, just like if you were probably to go to anywhere else in European countries like Germany or Britain, there's this huge weird multicultural problem. I mean, everybody has their multicultural issues, but in America, it's like this strange pan thing going on between a black underclass that starts Black Lives Matter and they riot and shoot all the time, between a Chinese elite that are like birth tourists who just go there, and then whites are pretty much told to be like the liberal elite, but you can't be like trailer trash or anything below it because you just don't exist. And so there's this extreme high expectation for white people to do something. And it really becomes that America is like the Disneyland of the world, and that you can only enjoy America if you're a rich liberal elite.
Mm, yeah.
But it's also confusing too, is because there's so much. America is the center of whole racial mixing and multiculturalism propaganda, and they will do this to every other nation that white nation that looks up to America, even though. Right now that Donald Trump has won the presidency, that's going to hopefully maybe change. I'm not so sure if it will though.
Mm. Um, just regarding Trump, I am a bit skeptical. I honestly
Hmm.
don't know if he's if he's going to deliver all of his promises. Well, no president really ever has. Or at least, I haven't come across a president who's filled, everything they set out to do. But I don't know. I think he may have ulterior motives. I honestly think he's just there for power.
Oh yeah,
I don't really think that he has our interests in mind. I don't even think he has like alt-lightish interests in mind. Um, he just saw an opportunity. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I voted. I actually voted for him, and
Oh, I'd vote for him if I was in America.
yeah,
If
there's a
he was there.
huge. I'm in Pennsylvania, and the big talk is that Pennsylvania was one of the first states to go full out Trump or Republican in about 20 or 30 years of its history. And
Oh,
the only place that voted Hillary was the main city, Philadelphia. But
ugh.
Emily Eucas, who's another alt right gal, she's in
Mm,
Philadelphia. And it's true that there's a huge voter fraud by the black community that voted for Hillary, and the white upper class made that happen. And she kind of exposed it on her YouTube channel. However, even though Philadelphia said that it was for Hillary, it turns out that everyone outside is Trump, and it's true. And all of Pennsylvania wanted Trump, and it was something of that. Just like everywhere else, Trump was speaking to that dispossessed majority of whites who wanted a voice for themselves. And I think Trump knows that you have to play. It's definitely a racial game, and it may also seem the big criticism is that he has a lot of money, and it seems like a billionaire just bought out the position. And that's probably what should give you one thing note about America, is that you can pretty much do whatever you want, so as you have any amount of money you have, and Donald Trump just shows that. And that's a big criticism for him on both sides. However, the redeeming factor is people think he's going to have some form of racial nationalism or make the alt-right more acceptable in the future.
I don't think Trump is. I just think the culture that allowed Trump to be elected, the changing zeitgeist will help the alt-right movement. It's not really Trump. It's the zeitgeist shift, the Overton window shifting, which has helped Trump to be elected, and which will in turn help us to spread our views out there and be more open with our views.
Yeah, I know that there's the only people I've heard that dislike Trump are just people who are into the whole social justice warrior culture, and there's pretty much no good reason. There never was a good reason to vote for Hillary. It was just a reaction against Trump. If the Democratic Party really wanted, or people who are into Democratic politics would have voted Bernie Sanders. But there's also that criticism is that the DNC in a conspiracy did not allow Bernie win because they knew Hillary had a huge amount of power. And so I think the Democratic Party at this position has lost touch with its people, and they don't know what they're voting for, and it's basically just a reaction against. It's now becoming a red pill, blue pill moment. The blue pill party and the red pill party.
Yeah, I think regarding this election, the most important thing that's happened is the shift in support among the white working class from Democrats, and I'm referring to the northern states here because I know the white working class in the South has been voting for the Republicans since like the 60s, but up in the northern states, such as like Massachusetts, where there was a sort of white working class voter base for the Democrats, that's just been completely, well, not completely removed from. Well, I'm sure there are some people of the white working class who support the Democrats up north, but I'd say a lot of them have switched to Trump, and you see this with Brexit as well, the sort of white working class revolt against liberalism.
It's happening in the majority of countries, where you have the Philippines and the Brexit, and you have to think, is everybody gonna now be this weird right wing or civil nationalist alt-right policies we're gonna have in the next 10 or 20 years? Because I wouldn't know.
I'm honestly not sure. I think that the white working class is a lot more, to use the term, because I know some people don't like, but to use the term red pilled than Trump or Trump's family. Trumpism is important, just even on a symbolic level. It just shows that there is a revolt against these people, and there is this voter base that is waiting for people such as ourselves, to reach them. It shows that they're willing to accept opinions that are outside of the general zeitgeist. Like Trump, I don't know. Are Trump's opinions really outside of the zeitgeist? No, but what he represents is, like, he's the modern day Caesar. Like there are parallels there,
Yeah, I mean, he said the other day, calling out a CNN reporter, saying, "No, you're the fake news," especially with this whole golden shower thing going on against him, which is completely false, as if Trump knows there's this whole real news / fake news, and that he can control power, calling people against him fake news.
Yeah, I think this is this election has put the last nail in the coffin. In the mainstream media, people just don't trust them anymore. They're becoming irrelevant. Only old people watch them, and even old people are starting to are starting to doubt what they're saying. Young people are going online, so it's definitely good for people such as ourselves, because we don't have any influence in CNN. We're not broadcasters. We don't run TV stations. We have YouTube channels. We have websites, and as more and more people flock to the internet, we'll be able to red pill them. Yeah.
It's funny. No, that's interesting, because 100 or 200 years ago, it pretty much was just like newspapers, and people would exist in their own little communities, and there were no computers and internets, and it's just a recent like 10 or 20-year-old thing now that we can have YouTube and be exposed to what academia what was like in like 1880 or something is now for free, and we can learn all this stuff on the internet and basically question the authority of every single sources coming from. So one of the controversial things people love to talk about is the Holocaust, and there was the whole Holocaust revisionist thing in the 90s, and they said that there was huge exaggerations between what's happened in the Holocaust. And of course there are hate crime laws, you can't say something about the Holocaust. Yet at the same time, again, I feel like if there was a Holocaust again today, everyone would have their iPhone and Snapchat and would be filming these things, and everybody would be controlling themselves, and we could always come to some conclusion that's not ultimate, like 6 million Jews being dead, which seems like an outrageous number compared to the amount of Jews living in Europe at the time.
Yeah. Technology is a double-edged sword, but this is, one aspect of technology that is good. It's an extremely powerful force that just and I believe it needs to be harnessed in the right way. And I hope we do that, and I think we are doing that with websites like Countercurrents, Radix, Amren, the Right Stuff, the Daily Stormer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And people like Woes. We're going to be able to reach more and more people.
How did you find out about this stuff, or were you always consider yourself right-wing or racially aware or some kind of nationalist? And how did you?
I found this stuff when I was very young.
Yes,
I found it when I was 12.
I'm kind of the same way too about that.
Yeah, I'm 17 now. I'm still quite young. Yeah, I found it all when I was 12, and I liked the Nazi iconography.
Well, I started reading Countercurrents when I was 17, and I'm in my early 20s at the moment. Yeah, I mean, I was talking also at the well too. I mean, I remember being in kindergarten class where these things come natural, and you're like, you have brown skin, I have pale pan skin, and those are just two differences. I mean, they say babies can be racist, but I think just the whole racial awareness thing, you really don't have to be red pill these things. You just have to be, it comes naturally.
Most people are on a deep subconscious level. We know that due to studies about children, about babies who aren't bigoted because they aren't they're too young to know what bigotry. Well, they're naturally prejudiced against people who don't look like them and who are different from them. And as we know, physical differences are just like one manifestation of race. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of young people also getting into the alt-right as well, because at one point in time, I remember there was no such thing as the alt-right. I mean, it was just currently a term now that everybody, once was alternative right, but now this whole alt-right and the mainstream frenzy just happened with Hillary Clinton, and you could say this year there's a frenzy about it. And so I remember a time when it wasn't really alt-right 5-7 years ago. It was kind of just... I mean, there was Richard Spencer's alternative right. I remember reading that since 2010, and then all of a sudden it became this whole lifestyle now.
I spoke to a friend of mine who's been in Irish nationalism for a good 10, 12 years, and he told me when he first joined, there was no one involved. There was no one who was under, apart from him, there was no one in Irish nationalism who was under 40. Now most of the people are really young.
I would believe
And
so.
yeah, it's great to see this. Like, I remember when I was, what, 12, 13. I found Paul when I was 12. And I'd say mostly red pilled when I was, by the time I was 13. I felt extremely lonely. And I felt very isolated because there was no one out there who shared, my beliefs. I thought there was no one out there who shared my beliefs, and I actually didn't hear of the term alt-right because I just stayed on Paul for the last few years up until I think it was late 2015, and I heard of the term alt-right through Woe's channel, one of his streams, and and then through him I found other people on the alt-right, but like prior to that, for years I was just on Paul. I'd occasionally watch a Ramsey Paul video or a video by the Gold or something like that. And I think I heard of Jared Taylor back in 2014. But I was just isolated from the community, and I'm happy I found it. I'll be honest, I found some really great people through this movement.
I came from different aspects of finding everyone you just mentioned from different ways. I mean, I think might have been 16. I was listening to the Stark Truth on Voice of Reason Radio Network. That was kind of still like this old right type of radio channel. I think Greg Johnson made his debut on there about eco-fascism and Savitri Devi on the Stark Truth, and Ramsey Paul would just be a guest over and over again on the Stark Truth, and that's how I kind of came to him at that certain young age. And for Jared Taylor wise, I would find him in the most oddest place ever. I was in an Asian Studies course, and one of his first books, Shadows of the Rising Sun, was one of his first books, which he written about the Japanese and how they are different from white Americans, and how both societies should be separate and have their own integrity and not be assimilated together. And I just love that book. But these other things too, they happen at certain now that today in the 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017 beyond, people now are just mouse clicks away discovering Jared Taylor's introduction on white identity and who he is. Now that there's this internet persona that he says white all the time, that wasn't a thing back then. I never catched on the white thing. I just thought I thought his that video on white identity and of his book and some of his early stuff was basically my persuading point to say that you could do this professionally and with tons of integrity, and it just shows that through his character.
I think the whole white meme is a bit irreverent, and I understand that there is a sort of meme culture, and that, and I understand it quite well. That's how I came to the alt-right. But when it comes to people like Jared Taylor, they're like academics, and people like Greg Johnson, it just seems a bit irreverent to use terms such as that, and make memes about them. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a bit too serious.
Oh, it's like Kevin McDonald. He sounds like Ray Romano, and he just has this. Oh, okay, I'm going to do my. He sounds like this.
I will admit the whole Stefan Molyneux wrote the Culture of Critique thing is pretty funny.
I haven't seen that actually.
Oh, you have?
No.
Kevin McDonald plagiarized Stefan Molyneux,
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that was
stole all of his ideas.
I remember that. That was on the same time, I think, was when Slavoj Zizek plagiarized a criticism of Kevin McDonald's work simply because he didn't want to lose his job and he wanted to be this. Hey, I'm not an anti-Semite, but I'm going to shame this guy. But it became boring plagiarism when Zizek was trying to condemn McDonald, but he was doing it for no apparent reason, just to keep his job. It made him look weird on his end, but that's funny when people.
Zizek critiqued McDonald.
What happened was there was this Lacan journal online, and Zizek thought he wrote this article criticizing culture of critique back in I think 2004. A white nationalist guy or some of the alt-right guys on the internet found out that same Zizek criticism was a copy of another criticism of McDonald. And he pointed this out to Zizek, and Zizek replied and said, yeah, it is soft plagiarism, but I I don't know. I had to did it because I don't associate with this guy's theories. And Richard Spencer and Kevin McDonald did a podcast on that too for like 30 minutes. And the funny part is McDonald never heard of Zizek, and Zizek was only he didn't want to write. Like the funny part is Zizek didn't even read Culture Critique, but somehow made a soft plagiarism from his friend who said, you just got to condemn this guy because this guy talks about Jews. And Zizek's like, okay. And so that's what happened. And then
I kind of like Zizek.
Yeah.
Something about it I like. But yeah, that's not great. Zizek's my favorite commie.
There was this whole alt-right talk like about a year and a half ago, especially I remember on American Renaissance, that was like the top news piece about that. And on the Radix podcast with Spencer and McDonald, Spencer said, oh, he could be working for us. But McDonald's like, I'm not so sure. But yeah, there's interesting things. Zizek's first film debut was actually defending Laibach. Laibach, as being the Slovenian fascist band that would just, flirt with fascist ideology, and people would think they're fascist. But here's Zizek making his debut, telling that this band is actually working in reverse or comprehending alt-right ideals, which I think is really interesting. But now today, Zizek is this pop thing, this pop icon. I mean, in Christian Lander's book, Stuff White People Like, any graduate white person of a graduate white program says their favorite philosopher is Zizek, simply because he mixes the pop with the academic to make academic feel that the normie can read it, or.
Yeah, that's another thing I don't like.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just old at heart, and I've been told that before, but I don't like the idea of mixing, pop fun, pop culture with, philosophy and science, etc. I don't like it. I think it just levels it out for
it's definitely
the masses.
The definition of postmodernism, which happened in the 80s.
Maybe it's just because I'm a bit of a. Maybe it's because I have some aristocratic sympathies, yes. But I just don't like the idea of, most people reading that type of stuff. Yeah.
It certainly is a destructive behavior what happened with Gen X generation. I mean, when the baby boomers, or the cultural Marxists got into power in the 70s in the American institutions, by the time it was the 80s and the whole fraud of the deconstruction theory with Derrida, they basically had nothing to argue for anymore. They just basically said, I don't want to read this because I don't like it, and it's by some old dead white guy. And so what happened is people like Dom DeLillo in his book White Noise basically wrote this criticizing book saying that what you get in academia, American academia now, are a bunch of rich liberal class kids that just been told to get their PhDs in English or women's studies because they have the money, and then they're writing their doctorate thesis about Plato, Socrates, and Bazooka Joe writings, and somehow that's interconnectable and everything is universal in meaning. And that basically, Dom DeLillo and some other writers like David Foster Wallace are a pet of that NPR generation, which assumes the smallest lowbrow thing, from cartoons to weather, has basically an inner old school philosophical background, and things can be deconstructed. But you could see where this is coming from, and it's basically people have been too stupid, or they've been caught up with internet technology or whatever, to actually have the discipline and tradition to read some of these old modernist texts, and rather they're just having fun with new ways. It's basically an advanced creative writing class of pseudo-academia,
Yeah, I remember I was in this bookshop, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, I forget. I was in there, and I was, I think I was looking at I believe it was either the philosophy section or the occult section. There's an occult section there, and there was something about Celtic symbolism. I was reading that, and I spotted, out of the corner of my eye, some, fucking picture book about Martin Heidegger, and it just got me angry.
That's I think those books, the introduction series, and they're picture books, right? I remember there was there was an introduction to fascism, and they opened up with David Irving saying how bad he is, and he's actually a fascist. I'm like, hold on, I did my Irving research, and you guys completely took it out of context to say, I don't know. But those introductions to, I think we have one book of an introduction to Heidegger, And
Didn't Dugan write a book called An Introduction to Heidegger?
yep, it's on the Richard Spencer website.
Yeah, but
It's
there's a difference between him writing a book on it
yeah,
and some fucking idiot
oh
drawing
yeah.
pictures of fucking Heidegger. Martin Heidegger. Yeah. Anyway, back to the interview. Sorry about this.
So yeah, that's a good one. The Paul Gottfried translation of Dugan's Heidegger. I have yet to look at that one. I remember briefly reading it online, but it's yeah, Heidegger is it's one of my favorite European continental philosophers. I think it's the ultimate. I think everything is today is just post Heidegger, right? Well, it's like those whole French critical theorists are nothing more than just them imitating Heidegger in a very far left Marxian version. I think Heidegger is in that same picture book, the Introduction Heidegger. Um, they were talking about that he's a mystic, right? None of them really take him seriously because he's year zero. He says that philosophy should be about not about thinking about yourself and your own condition, but actually a camera above the world. And we have to talk about things like time and being and super complicated stuff where it's meta thinking about the nature of thinking. I really, I wish I would read more about him, but it's just that's why they say he's hard to read, is simply because he's telling you to weed out things before you start thinking about the act of thinking, and it's just a whole twister. And then most people ignored him because if you tell a normie, oh, he joined the Nazi party, and then all the normies don't want to read him. But at the same time, the whole school of deconstruction existentialism is basically a post-Heidegger. Even they might say that Heidegger weighted up the word deconstruction, but not in the offensive terminology Derrida has used it. I mean, Jason Giorgiani had a good speech from an Arctos meeting, and he really explains that in terminology, saying that everything we have today is just post-Heidegger.
Mm. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's certainly there's a lot of icons and idols on the alt right, and you can go from Schopenhauer to Heidegger, and in countercurrents, there's always some new celebrity being praised, from Robertson Jeffers to an obscure Italian avant-garde artist. And it seems like these figures have been accumulating to make up an established classical new right, or a right wing with an integrity that isn't so much Adolf Hitler and Mussolini.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, for one thing, I think my interested idols. I've always been interested in Eastern philosophy, and I love Alan Watts and Yukio Mishima and some of the more modern Murakami and Kawabata. I found that the Eastern writings have been more of an interest in, because I think the Eastern writings is basically what Heidegger was trying to do. He was trying to introduce the Eastern philosophy onto the West, but in a Western context. I think if you really want to get quickly onto the whole racial consciousness or collective being without the whole scientific tradition, you just read Eastern philosophy, and I think it's great to get into it real quick to form an alt-right view of the world.
I don't know much about Eastern philosophy now. I've obviously heard of some of the big names, but I really just don't know that much about it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that.
Well, this thing is the best. I think Countercurrents always talks about Alan Watts, and Greg Johnson really likes Alan Watts, and some of the classical Alan Watts speeches from the '60s and early on and later, they were basically his hippie. He was targeting that hippie audience, that early baby boomer audience, and saying that if you really think Western civilization is evil and racist and whatever and patriarchal, then really he was surrogating that with such as the philosophy of Buddhism and Hinduism and Shintoism, and these and that's what Watts was pretty much all about, which helped create. He established the whole New Wave school of thinking. And that's why there's this strange, convoluted pop Buddhism we have today, thanks to Alan Watts. But at the same time, I don't mean it. He's not anti-white in a sense. I always think he was a stoic character of the right, Alan Watts. And certainly there is you can learn much more or know about things instead of thinking things in scientifical, like getting away material things. I mean, it's a reason why people join the Hare Krishna pop thing, is because Hari Krishna was this whole let go of everything and be one with love, even though how corny that is. But in a foundational, traditional sense, you're acting as if you're in being in time or something like that.
Mm. Yeah. Uh,
But
yeah, I'll have to look into that.
yeah, yeah. But other than that, it's I mean, for your own videos, whatchamacallit, when you started this, were you blogging before or on Discuss or like alt-right forums? Or how has your activity been before you started YouTube, and what are you doing now for your latest activities?
Prior to last summer, I didn't do anything. I didn't appear anywhere. And then I found a Skype group on 8chan, and from there, I found an Irish Skype group. Somebody posted the link on 8chan. I found that, and from there I started speaking to people. And I know some of them quite well. There's some great guys on there. Um, and I started making videos in August, but actually prior to that, I appeared on one of Woe's streams, which I think it was called Era Exit.
Hmm.
Yeah, he did a hangout on the possibilities of an Irish exit and the possibility of reunification. Because I remember back after Brexit, Sinn Féin, were pushing for a referendum on it. Yeah, and that was my first appearance on YouTube, and then I started making videos in late August, and through making videos, I met a lot of people, and I still speak to most of them today. A lot of good people. Yeah.
It's weird because the Pilleater brand name has been at least on the internet since 2009, especially with my classic trolling history on you'rethemannowdog.com or ytmd.com. My name is associated with that, as well as on other gaming and fun stuff forums. If you just type in Pilleater into Google, there's always been this online presence since I was really young, just having fun on the internet, as well as some other names too. But I always felt that internet has never left me. And then when doing my recent YouTube channel, I felt that I need to take the franchise somewhere else and take off where. But that's funny where there are definitely more people being exposed to the internet now, and they could create whatever they want through, and they don't even have to have a background. They could just make that one viral video and get like 20,000 views, and then they're a celebrity, and then they're well known, and they have this background on it. But I think that's interesting though, is because it's definitely the internet is becoming this cyber city where people are becoming internet avatars online.
Yeah. I do think the problem with the internet is that it can act as it can act as a platform to numb people from what is really going on in society. A lot of people spend their time on the internet complaining about blacks, the maps, the stews, etc. But they're not doing anything in real life. It's just them on their internet intellectual playpens. Not getting involved in real life movements or interacting with people or even meeting up with people.
It's funny because the internet is also the ultimate, like, only white people have used the internet, and when black people use it, they'll go on like World Star Hip Hop or pornography. It's barely a minimum.
It's kind of a safe space.
Yes, for white people, and yet there's hardly any other
And strictly
non-whites
black people.
on the internet. Like that's the weird part, and it's this stuff white people like thing where they just have to be racially aware of these things and realize that the internet game is run by whites like you and me, and so it's this funny thing that's happening, and I don't understand why. It's interesting, and it's kind of this weird I mean, there's also like Reddit boards like Happa, and Happa is this Reddit board for every like half white, half Asian who's like a social justice warrior, and they don't like the world is because they feel like they're ultimately the victim and they lose at the multicultural and diverse game, and they feel like they need to blame other whites, or they don't want to be associated with their white side and rather be on their Asian side. It's the most like dysfunctional thing ever, and I think the only thing that's like entertaining other non-whites or people who are anti-white are just other white liberals who enforce it and just prod it with a stick. I find that there's a problem with that.
Mm. Yeah. Um, I do have some sympathy for people like for the people on Hapa on that r/Hapa thing. I think I've been there before, and people like that, people who feel like they've been dealt a bad hand in the world. Because I felt like that myself at some points, but I think they tackle the issue in the wrong aspect. Instead of whining about their position in society, they should go out there and they should and they should accomplish something. They should get involved in something. They should do something that not only helps themselves and improves themselves, but they should also get involved in something that's greater than themselves. Because if you just spend your whole time whining, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to do anything. So if you want to go out there and advocate for Hapa rights, fuck it. That's a bit autistic, but it's better than fucking whining on r/Hapa.
Here's the thing. I've been a long time lurker of Hapa, and I can kind of associate on the Hapa. But I'm looking at it right now, and I just think it's so. It's a cargo cult. Okay, I think it was really started by a Eurasian writer, who is this guy who rated on stuff Eurasian people like, and he was just this weird son of a half white, half Asian who basically hated the world and basically wants to commit suicide, and he's just dooming. He's a nihilist, and basically now he has his cult on the internet, on the Reddit, and he tries to made other half white, half Asian kids, and now they're in this cargo cult, and they think they're nihilist, and they think they should be deserved everything they like. Here's what it's saying on, like, I'm looking at, I'm sick of these articles every day. One says, disastrous white male Asian female affair, boyfriend kills ex and 2 others, blames Satan. Stefan Molyneux listens a man and explains how his friend's girlfriend raised his baby and how she got knocked by an Asian, an ex-con of 9 kids who was Hapa. Why don't people here congratulated bangarangs for being woke? I don't want a half-Asian kid, white male expats in Japan circle jerk. And one more. I'm a half Chinese and half white, and as many people expect, my mom is Chinese, my dad is white. My mom is racist, sexist, homophobic, and classist. My mom only dated white men, probably Jewish men. It's like they have ultimate hatred for alt-right or red pill ideals, and they never considered. It's just like they're neutered from their white side, but they are acting like these white liberals that assume that they can overcome their whiteness, as if anybody who's half white, you can't have white racial consciousness. It's just not a thing, and it's a disease and sickness among every single white person, European person, is because there's this grammar of self-intolerance, or they're just not allowed to think about race in terms of whites, and so it creates this terrible thing on the Hapa where it's like their biggest enemies are Tila Tequila and Margaret Cho. If there's any Asians that associate with whites, they are basically the enemy. And so really, I think it's funny what I've been doing to attack this Hapa Reddit board back. I started my own ideology called Asian Aryanism, which I think is the complete opponent of the Hapa Reddit. It's basically a boogeyman ideology, so I can scare them and say,
Have they responded?
They have. They got really ticked off with some of my interviews with Kira and China Goth. They were really, and I use fake names on their Reddit and pretend I'm a normie and go on their Reddit to post it. And so what happens is they get like, this is real. I can't believe, and they give you that stupid American liberal things, what they always do. And yet, I'm starting to believe whether these people are really half Asian or not, or just even a quarter Asian, or just like other whites who like have this high expectation of what Asian identity should be. And my oral argument is, hey, if we're going to live in a red-pilled nation in the future, and let's say the alt-right wins, and there's a new standards of what is considered left-wing, right-wing, then I think multicultural and diversity, because it's a source of tension and conflict, what's going to happen is people are going to have ethno-states in the future, right? And so there's going to be ethno-states for, blacks, whites, Asians, but there'll also be multicultural ethno-states, or like half-breed ethno-states the size of like Wilmington and Delaware, or like really small cities. And so like the internet boards, like if you're going to, let's be science fiction here, if you're going to go in the future, right, hopefully there'll be a Hapa ethno-state so they won't have to bitch about being this or that side. And so your answer is Asian Aryanism, and that includes a right-wing or traditionalist way of thinking. And so that completely destroys your Hapa Reddit and your whole nihilist thing. I mean, I'm just sick and tired of everyone being called, if you're half white, half Asian, you're Elliot Rodgers. So,
You mentioned a white, a black, and an Asian ethno-state. I assume you're speaking When you mention these ethnostates, you're referring to them being in America, because
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yes, it's
Because
America.
like the idea of white identity and Asian identity, and I know I may get some shit from this from people in the comments and even from you, but I don't really think there is a white identity.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't think there is an Asian identity.
I was
It's
talking this
just
with another guy before, but yeah.
both the term white seems to have originated, and the so-called identity, pseudo-identity of whiteness seems to have originated out of opposition, not in affirmation to something. And you know, the problem of this occurs when this group is no longer there. And you know, I can use the example of Ireland. For hundreds of years, you know, Irishness means something, and and the thing about Irishness is that we can get back to affirm what Irishness is. However, for a few hundred years now, well, a few hundred, almost 1,000 years, due to invasions, and I made these points in my video, due to invasions by the Vikings, the English, the Normans, etc., Irishness has kind of been in opposition to other things, to other identities, and you know, this has created a vacuum after these other groups left. And I think the same thing may happen to whites in America, where they'll become identityless, and I honestly don't know how, you know, this North American ethno-state's going to deal with that.
Exactly. You know, I was talking this with another friend, whether the word white is correct, or should we say European advocate or European American, like David Duke says. And white certainly to the left or the political establishment means a fascist uniform. Like you say that the Drexel professor in Philadelphia says he wants white genocide on Christmas Day, and he says, "Oh, I'm not talking about European descent people. I'm talking about quote unquote white." As in the fascist uniform, and that people have whiteness problems, and it's stupid abstract thing when he's really, if you think about it, it's all European people, and so I think people have to be extremely specific with that racial terminology. And now on countercurrents, the word white is just it's just used. It's out. We know what it is. It means European, but at the same time, like you said, it's double standard that works against you, saying that white, and you got to be specific, and it's the whole European.
Even the whole European thing, you know, I'd argue isn't really a full formed proper identity like Irishness is or Englishness is. You know, there seems to be some sort of connection between European peoples. Maybe that's a sort of Faustian spirit that they have, or I'd argue that it probably is just our Christian heritage that brought us together.
There's the huge debate in the alt-right. I remember it on Red Ice Radio, and I still think it lingers on today, between Richard Spencer versus Greg Johnson. Richard Spencer says European imperium, and Greg Johnson says sovereign ethno-states. And I still think that's pretty much
Richard
going
Spencer,
on.
I haven't seen any good points coming from Richard Spencer regarding that.
I'm more on the Greg Johnson ethno-state side. If there's going to be an Irish place, you make it Irish, and there's going to be
I also want to mention. I also want to mention that I do believe in, you know, I guess a European descended ethno-state in America, like even just on a
because if you put it in the American
I just see problems arising.
Exactly.
But, I still think it could work, and it works a lot better than what we have today. Something could come of it.
I will say that the current situation in America, that is, if you're white, and you're not allowed to think about, you know, there's Italian, Irish Americans, but those are just facade things, and they're not really hooked to those. And so what's happened is, I wanted to bring this up. There was this book some years back. It's also talked in most race critical theory classes in American academia. It's by Noel Gashinev, and that's how the Irish became white. It's basically
Ignative.
Yep, and I think you've probably read it too. And his whole argument is basically
I've never read it, but
basically the whole argument is the Irish coming into America had it better because their skin tone was white compared to Black Americans, which are African, and Irish were given a free ride because the upper transatlantic English elite in America chose them because they're white. Even though the Irish were as crazy and uncontrollable and barbaric as Black Africans, according to Ignatieff. And so he says that is the foundation of whiteness studies, is that whites will biasly choose people like themselves when they should have chosen. His theory is basically blacks could have been the new Americans, but they didn't just because of skin color, and it's really a
Yeah,
stupid thing.
yeah, because he equates skin color with race. Well, as we know, skin color is just one manifestation of race. So
And it's also
it's
true now that
it's
people
morphological
have
feature.
criticized the book so much, where Ignatieff also ignores the ideal that, well, even if blacks were to assimilate, let's say they chose the blacks and they became white, even if they were to assimilate, however, they are racially different, and according, stuff by J. Philippe Rushton, black Africans could not fit in a European post-Victorian setting of that time in America. There are some things like the internet, which seems uniquely European, or even calculus as a math. That's why they've been banning some calculus classes in American academics, because the African mind, or something in nature, cannot compute calculus. It seems to be
Yeah, even
uniquely.
Africans who have the same IQ as whites do worse when it comes to
Yes,
maths.
I have experienced
Do they
this.
do? I'm pretty sure they do the same if they have the same IQ as us, of course, on verbal tests. Um, Not sure about that though, or at least close to us. If they do have the same IQ as us.
But the whole
Uh,
point is that people have different racial interests, and there are things, especially today, which only benefit if you are in a white framed in mind, and people call that racist if you're trying to make them white, right? If you try to make a black person white, that's racist, or that's racist. And that's why this whole Happa Reddit thing, they think it's racist if you have any white racial consciousness or white, and they don't even, and it's sad because normies don't even have the words for that in America. But it just shows you, going back to the whole European imperium versus ethno-states argument, that for Spencer's side of being this European imperium, you just put everyone in this big, in the American situation, everyone's white. The problem is there's this strained white muttness going around, right? It's been talked about, and I notice like people who have more English features, you're going to get really specific in genetics here, are going to be more thinner and have like a broader face. The Italian Americans, which is often joke in American tropes, are going to be fat and they look like Amy Schumer or something, and they have this weird dialect. And then like the Irish, and they all have brown hair and they're kind of fidgety, and so I'm thinking like, even though all those people may be white, there's still going to be this weird Christian Lander stuff white people like divide between the quote unquote good kind of white people and the quote unquote bad kind of white people, which then whites will act upon against each other as a
hmm.
way of this Christian shaming. So I'm for the whole Greg Johnson side, where there needs to be sovereign states for each subgroup of white interest. And I think that's basically the family. And I think there'll be less civil wars if all the other whites understand. I hope it doesn't become like a Balkan or Yugoslavia war, but I believe that whites are already good with themselves, where they will self-segregate and go with families they desire. And I think that's already happening in America. There just has to be a bond between that.
Regarding the white American question, I have, when I am feeling therapy, I have had the idea of, like taking back parts of America, taking back the whiter parts of America once there is a civil war, if it happens that way, and incorporating them into the countries. So, for example, New England would be part of England.
Yes. That makes sense.
Boston, Massachusetts, we're going to have to take it for the Irish.
Yep.
The Italians can get New York.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's a bit LARPy. But I don't hate the idea. I think the problem with that, as you mentioned earlier, it comes from the fact that a lot of Americans just don't identify with their European roots anymore.
Here's something funny. In Pennsylvania, there's a place called Lancaster, and that's where the German Dutch Amish are, and they've never left. And the government basically has their own ethno-state there, and you go in there, and we call it Amish country, and it's like they don't use technology, they don't do anything, and
I love the Amish. They're good people.
Yes, they use their own language that is developed, and I guess that is the alt-right fantasy some people have, and yes, it's called Lancaster. Now, given the fact that if you were to give Happas, or I would call Asian Aryans an ethno-state, give it, please, the size of Lancaster, and just, that's how big it is. I mean, I'm serious, because it's such a small number.
Yeah, just Asian Aryans. Oh,
yes,
God.
yes, it will happen, and just give them, that's what I'm saying, and if you have, like, white, half black Oreo people, hey, give them the size of the same, it doesn't have to be the size of, like, Texas. It could just be a little, I don't want to say the word cult, but it's there, and there are certainly cities that cater to that, and it'll just grow from there. And they're a growing force, and they're basically the German Dutch. It works, and so
Wow, there are 309,000. Sorry, 308,000 Amish people.
yep, and they all belong to the same family. They all know each other for language, and you can't. Here's the thing: you can't really. It's hard to assimilate with them because they'll do background checks saying, "Are you German? Are you Dutch?" And you just have to be born from it. And if you run away from the town, you're exiled, and you're never allowed to come back in with the Amish, the people. It's a very strange. And so Americans outside, everyone in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia will make fun of them and say, "Oh, they're that weird. They're worse than the Mormons. They're this weird. They have sex with their daughters and their sons, and they do it with their pig." I'm like, well, it's like they're making fun of them, but they have the most traditionalist life, and they're basically that funny alt right fantasy of manifesting destiny, or at least the Asian woman in the, or no, Aryan woman in the Aryan field that Andy Nowicki says. Sorry about that. There was a Freudian slip about Asian women, but yeah, I think there's definitely this European ethnostates could happen. It really just has to do with people. I think it first starts with whites being okay to be racially okay about themselves and having conscious. And I think it has to be generational. I think it might start with the millennials, but I am also scared at the same time. I hope it is not an internal innate conflict, what Jared Taylor says, where European people are like Jared Taylor in his one American Renaissance of post-racial America said that whites innately throughout history have basically worked against themselves through pathological altruism, and such acts like feminism is basically the natural nature of what white women feel in the cultural Marxist era, but it turns that we become self-hating and we work against ourselves. I just hope that isn't a thing in the future, and rather just a generational thing after the Great Wars, and hopefully it'll go away in like 30 or 40 years. I don't know. I hope it's not an internal trait that white people have.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully not.
Because the alt-right thing is that it's either the Jews behind it, or that there's this liberalism or Marxism, and to make those problems go away, you just got to be the opposite. However, I think even if those things go away, there's still these reoccurring evolutionary traits, like as Kevin McDonald says, high trust societies, right? We're nomadic people, and we see those, we learn how to trust one another, and maybe trust has something to do with our inner nature. I mean, I just wish European people, I know there are great European people, and the thing is, I think there's this alt-right fantasy that they always want the Russian woman to be an ideal bride, or some kind of Eastern Croatian woman, you know?
Trust me, Americans. There are tons of East Euros in Ireland. God, the women look. They look well, and they age like fine wine. But you can tell there's no soul there. Eastern Europeans have no soul. I'm just going to put it out there. You see them, they have no expression on their faces. They're expressionless. You look at them, they're boring pricks. You can just tell by looking at them. And you just want to avoid them. They always have this scowl on their face. Ugh.
That's what I hear in the alt-right fantasy, is that you're going to find this beautiful broken English.
Because most Americans haven't met, like, most of these Slavic women. They're
Hungarian, right? That's always Hungarian women is also another. Paula Ramsey talks about it. I have no experience around them, but I know the stereotype, what it is, and I can only talk about people I have been around with. And so there's this alt-right fantasy saying, okay, they're white, but they're very traditional, and they have that background, and therefore they're better than American white feminists. And trust me, all white women in America are some form of bitchy, blue-haired feminist, or some degenerate normie that goes to bars and uses Tinder, and it's really a hectic situation right now in America, and that's why
it's kind of like that here as well. I myself, like, I don't know what I'd fucking say to most modern women. What is there to talk about with them?
I love Roger F. Devlin, and I met him in person. He's a super nice guy, and he completely has these theories written down, what has happened. And
oh yeah, didn't he write a book about sexual deviance?
Yeah, it's great. I have my book signed by him, by the way. And
is it worth getting?
Yes, it is definitely worth getting, because that solves the whole sexual problem right away. I highly 100% recommend
Implying day buying by Roosh V didn't solve it, lad. Come on.
No, he's even anti-Roosh V. I would say Devlin is like, he read that stuff, but like Roosh V in that whole game MGTOW, whatever, that's not the answer either. I'm more of a religious background and Christian and whatever, and
Oh yeah,
I
yeah. I don't support
me
promiscuity.
neither, me neither. I
Uh,
am the most prudest person ever. I don't do drugs, I don't drink, I don't
how
have
per the
promiscuous
Bible, son.
sex. I don't claim to be
Oh, I don't
Rushdi.
drink, smoke either. And I'm Irish.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what's even funnier because Irish are supposed to drink all the time, but
Mm.
I don't know. But the thing is, Devlin has it perfectly written in the book. I don't think we have time to recite the whole theory of it,
Oh yeah.
but the thing which is a terror right now in America, and I've brought this up to Devlin too. He even brought this up on the NPI event about in I think it was Norway, how Norwegian women are falling for Muslim men because they're men. I can't recall exactly the situation. I have to read over again. But the American situation, the liberal white elite here, and especially around college educated white males, have basically dumped their bitchy white feminist girls in favor of birth tourist Chinese women with broken English. And I see it all the time with four of my white friends. They all have Asian girlfriends. One's going to get married and have kids with it. Now, my argument is that's kind of going to be Asianarianism because they're going to have to basically discuss or at least talk about this issue and have a new racial consciousness. And they can't just say there's no race but the human race. They're going to have to come to the conclusion that their offspring is going to be half white, half Chinese or Asian, and deal with that and have some manifest destiny within that. And that's happening in a large numbers because the Asian woman is just better than the bitchy feminist, and it's a better safe haven for that. And that's why other alt-right guys in America are basically saying, no, don't go for Asian women, go for the Hungarian or Russian women.
Yeah, there's no excuse for fucking going out with Asian women. Really, don't do it, lads. Honestly, oh, God,
It's
don't.
what I'm saying is the American situation is so different, and
I
basically
understand. Just don't. Just fucking go celibate at that point.
but I
Like
think the
honestly,
point is, I think white
even going out with Slavic women, I'd be a bit disappointed if I knew some Irish guy was going out with some Slavic woman.
ah, well, here's the thing. It's like white nationalists or the alt-right will have to address this issue to their white feminist women, which they call them, and somehow reconstructure or re-help. Like, I feel like people are divorced or broken with their significant other, and there has to be a point where you have to clean that slate and tell them that you have to go above feminism or something. And people like Lana on Red Ice Radio has her own little program where she's doing that with other alt-right women, and it is certainly helping. And I hope that there can be this overcoming of feminism, or at least that it's just some silly folly of underage white girls. They just don't understand the world and making wrong decisions, and maybe some healthy patriarchal society can restore those values and not have declining white birth rates.
I think if we are to, address the women question, we really do need to look at the TQ.
Yeah.
And I've always said that the TQ is more important than the JQ even, the thought question. What are we to do with the thoughts?
Yep. Yeah, that's so important. I mean, how long will feminism alive? And is this ultimately permanent in the cultural Marxist era?
No, no, no. I'm sure some of them are feminists, but I'm sure half of them haven't fucking read books. When I say thought, I'm referring to the slut question, the whore question.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that too.
Like, I'm sick of these thoughts. I want these trad wives out here, not these thoughts,
Yeah, I know. It's. I hope things could. I hope these women will change, or our women, I should say, will change their mind, and there could be trust, because I think the trust has been broken so much, where it's okay to be someone on the internet in your parents' basement watching anime is because their women have failed to be good partners. Or at least, I always have this theory that I think white America can be saved if we practice arranged marriage again and get people at 17 or 18. I don't know. That sounds kind of...
Yeah, listen, I'm up for that as long as I get some cutesy 17 or 18-year-old. I don't have to fucking go out and date them,
Exactly,
So
that's what I'm saying. It'll be a eugenics program, and basically we'll do tests, and then, I don't know, 3 strikes you're out. I don't know, this is very LARPy science fiction again, but I'm just saying that maybe if there would be some system where people can have arranged marriages. This is simply what Devlin says, too. You can have arranged marriages, and then you wouldn't have to worry about the things, and then you could be devoted to a significant other without being free. I mean, supposedly America says you're free to choose who you want, right? But it's already a hectic struggle to go and use decadent platforms like Tinder or go to a bar, right, and meet other people who are decadent minded and want to do drugs and have promiscuous sex and not about staying down and meaning the bigger things. And I think that's really damaging people's psyche about how we look at things, and we think that's
Oh
the
yeah.
only way out, and that's why the game
more
can...
partners a woman has, the less likely she is to be married.
Yeah.
Promiscuity is a fucking very dangerous thing. The amount of diseases people catch, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on. I think most people know about this. I do just want to mention. Actually, I have a question for you, and I know this is your interview, but I do have a question. Where do you think is where are some good places to find trad wives or to find some more traditionally minded women?
All right.
Because I've been thinking about this for a while.
Well,
I've come to my own conclusions.
In the Pennsylvania area, in suburban Pennsylvania and in Philadelphia, I have realized from my interest, this might sound weird. Well, of course, everyone starts in school, and of course that sounds super cliche, but school's not the only place. That's just school. And I don't like when somebody says school's the ultimate answer, because you're lost in something. And so I've met my girlfriend at the board game club, because I have hobbies in board games. I love tabletop games, video games, and I find that being interacting with people face to face. There was also the suggestion that if you're in a social gathering, such on websites like www.meetup.com, there'll be places like jogging in the park, or there was this one social club for gardening, and I was in that, and I met an interesting few people. But I'm going to be honest with you with myself. You're talking specifically about trad women. Those were just examples where I felt anything but the decadent bar or Tinder, I would be against that. Totally against that. But
the club. Ugh.
Exactly. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I'm going to be honest with myself, and I'll probably have to make a YouTube video on this, but all my relations I've had with women were basically in my Asian studies class or Asian club. We're basically hanging out at the Shofusa in Philadelphia, the Japanese house, and basically through this strange networking of other Asians and whatnot. So it naturally came to me with my own interest, and that's the problem. This is not advice for white on white. This is something different, and so I can't really say. And I'm going to be honest with you too. The four white girls I've ever dated in my life, they all came from hectic and crazy backgrounds, and they certainly scarred me. And they actually found interest in me. I think I dated two in school. One was actually, ironically, in a Japanese class, and another was in a bar scene when I was with my brother. And I know that sounds weird, but that's like a good reason why I learned from it. But all the traditional Chinese American women I have found were basically at normal, healthy places. And but once again, I'm not saying go ahead and race mix. I'm saying this is my own preference, and so I don't know what the Irish situation is like.
Well, I have identified one place to find trad women, if you don't mind me just
okay.
If you don't mind me mentioning it. So I was in this call with some Irish guys, and we were speaking about, I believe we were speaking about women, good place to find them, in the modern world. And I've realized that there's really only one place, and that's this anti-abortion group called Youth Defense. And lad, it's full of these, Catholic cutie girls who are my age.
I just remembered. Church is the good place. I mean, I've been in a Pentecostal church.
No, I don't want to go to church just to find women. But
okay.
Yeah, no. I am, interested in reading the Bible and stuff like that. I'm not like some edgy atheist or anything like that. But just in regards to meeting women, I just don't. I'd feel unclean going to a church just to meet a woman. That just feels extremely disrespectful. So I wouldn't do that. But I would, however, try and seek them out through this abortion group, this anti-abortion group.
Yes, that sounds because they're all about anti-abortion.
I've seen a lot of cutie girls, and I'd say they're a lot more socially conservative than the average woman.
Oh yeah, there's definitely tons of women that are. I wish they were just abundant and everywhere. There's always this joke saying that,
and they aren't ugly either.
Yeah,
which is
yeah. I just
so.
wish there were more of that, and there are declining white birth rates. There needs to be more women like that, so everyone could trust, and the birth rates can go up. I mean, the reason why I referenced church, I was a part. It was only a few years ago, like 2 years ago, that I started actually going to church and a Pentecostal church, and yeah, you'll see those type of trad girls there, and some other types as well. And I mean, depending what church you go to, the church scene's pretty wrecked, but at the same time, yeah, you'll find anti-abortion. That is a very interesting thing.
I myself am anti-abortion. I know
Hmm.
that abortion is a controversial issue on the alt-right, so I'd have no problem going in there.
Or
I
here's the
agree
thing.
with them.
It's funny because the only pro-abortion are like white liberals, yet the greatest anti-abortion people are blacks in America. They will never get an abortion. It seems to me that
What do you mean they'll never get an abortion? Blacks get tons of abortions.
well, here's
They
the
might
thing,
be
and
outspoken, against it, the
they
same
are
way
they are
they are
super
against,
outspoken.
gays and shit like that. But
But
like most the like blacks have the highest percentage of gays, and they also have the highest abortions. So they might be outspoken about these things.
here's the thing. I mean it in the context of in the J. Philip Rushton, the K and R strategy, right? Blacks will have tons of kids at like 15 or 16. They'll have like 6 or 5 kids. And white liberals will only have like one kid, pamper them, and go to the best elite schools, and they're like the center of attention. Blacks are very outspoken. Black Americans are very outspoken about abortion, and they're against it. However, the only people that are really using abortions and advocating it and power wise are these white liberals. But like you said, yeah, there probably is a good amount of blacks that get abortions because they have sex a lot and that it happens much more frequently.
Yeah,
However, they're having more kids at the moment. They have like 6 kids by the time they're 16, and that's what I'm really trying to say. They're like, they'll never, one abortion, like I'm saying is, even though that number seems to be they're getting the most abortions, they should be getting even more abortions to lower down the rate of blacks invading in, and it should be less abortion for whites, and they should be having more kids like some Mormon family. You know what I'm saying?
like I'll be honest, I don't support abortion for black people just because they're black.
Oh,
And I know
okay.
that's a bit of a controversial statement because I know a lot of people want to
Here's
call
the
the
funny
black
part.
birth rate.
There's a controversy where if whites support abortion for blacks, they'll be called racist, or there's a eugenics program where they want to control blacks. And at the same time, however, whites promote promotion because there's this freedom of liberty. I can do whatever I want with my body, and it doesn't care. But when you tell that to a black person, they get super upset because you're assuming you want to extinct, you want to do black genocide. See where I'm coming from? And then it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you start
That's
to,
not the reason why I'm against abortion for blacks. I describe myself as a racist person.
oh, interesting.
I don't I don't say I just love my people and stuff. Well, I don't really like my people.
I'm just saying there's
They're
a,
my people, so I'm stuck with them. The same way I'd be stuck with a drug-addled brother if I had
oh,
one.
interesting.
And I'm gonna stick there with that drug-addled brother the same way. With the same, well, I'm gonna stick with my race the same way I'm gonna stick with my drug-addled brother. Doesn't mean I like my drug-addled brother all that much, but I still have that connection there.
Hmm.
I don't love the Irish people in their current state. I hate them in this state.
I feel the same
But
way too.
I have this connection with them, and I don't particularly care much for Nigerians being in Dublin. I really want to get them out.
Exactly. I feel
I
the same way about. I feel that like
I don't want to kill them when they're inside their mother's womb.
uh, I'm the same way where I feel as though white nationalism is the way to help the white people situation in America, and it's a self-improvement thing, and that's why it works, and I'm for that. It's I hate you because I love you and I want to do something better. But I understand too with the whole abortion thing, where it should be more white birth rates and less about an invading alien one. So, but we're reaching the hour, and I'm gonna close the conversation here. But is there
Yeah.
anything else you would like to say and what you're doing in your future activity?
I'm involved with a party called the National Party in Ireland, and it's pretty good. I'm just a lower level member, but it's pretty good. It's a good party. So if there's any Irish people listening, get involved with that. There are actual good nationalists involved with it. It's kind of a civic nationalist type of party. I'm not a civic nationalist, but it does advance my aims and my goals. So I'm there with it, and the people who are in charge are all good people, and they're not dafties who are going to just lead us down some dead end road. They're going to keep it local, and hopefully one day we'll get the National Party into the Dáil, because
Well,
I think we honestly can with the leadership we have there. Parties start up, every year, and most of them will fail, but this is not one of them.
awesome. Well, it's nice talking to Armenian Chica, and I hope to talk to you soon, and make sure everyone check out his videos.
It's nice speaking to you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.